I was 26 when this happened. Back in August of 2024, I'd taken a week off work and drove from Tennessee down to a beach town in Florida by myself because I honestly just needed to get away from people for a while. Nothing bad had even happened in my life or anything. I was just burned out. Same routine every day, same apartment, same co-workers. I rented this small beach house about 15 minutes outside the main tourist area because it was cheaper and quieter. The first 2 days were perfect. The beach wasn't crowded where I stayed. Mostly older couples walking dogs, people fishing, joggers in the mornings. During the day it felt peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in years. I'd wake up late, grab iced coffee from this little stand near the pier, then spend most of the afternoon sitting on the beach listening to podcasts. The guy I met that day didn't seem strange at first. I noticed him around noon while I was sitting near the water. He was maybe mid-40s, tan, wearing a faded fishing shirt and cargo shorts. He had this calm, friendly way about it. Not overly talkative, just casual. He passed by me once and nodded. Then maybe 20 minutes later, he stopped and asked if I knew whether the tide was supposed to get rough later because he wanted to take his boat out. I told him I had no idea since I wasn't from there. He laughed and said, "Yeah, figure that out." I remember thinking it was kind of weird he could tell, but I assumed it was because I was pale as hell and clearly not local. We talked for maybe 5 minutes, mostly normal stuff. Where I was visiting from, how long I was staying, whether I liked seafood. I made the mistake of mentioning the area where my rental house was. Not the address exactly, but close enough. After that, he just said, "Enjoy your vacation, man," and walked off. That should have been the end of it. Later that evening, I stopped at a grocery store, and I swear I saw him again near the frozen food aisle. At first, I didn't think much of it. Small beach town, whatever. But when I looked up from my cart, he was already staring at me before I even noticed him. Not smiling, just watching. I kind of did that awkward nod people do when they recognize someone. He didn't nod back, just turned and walked away slowly. That gave me a weird feeling for some reason. Small thing, but it stuck with me. That night around 10:30, I was back at the rental house sitting outside on the deck, listening to the ocean. It was one of those places built up on stilts with wooden stairs leading down to the sand. No houses directly beside it either. One empty lot on one side and another rental house further down. Super quiet. I remember hearing somebody walking on the beach below. Not unusual. People walked there at night all the time, but the footsteps stopped directly below the deck. I muted my podcast and listened. Nothing. Then after maybe 15 seconds, the footsteps started again. Slow. Crunch, 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 like somebody pacing. I leaned over the railing, but couldn't really see much because the outside light only covered part of the sand. I caught movement though, someone standing farther back near the dunes. I figured it was probably someone drunk or looking at the water, so I went back inside and locked the sliding door anyway. That uneasy feeling stayed with me though. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I convinced myself I was overthinking everything. I spent most of the day out again, trying not to act paranoid. I even laughed about it while driving around because it sounded ridiculous in my head. Then that afternoon, I saw the same guy again, this time near the pier parking lot. He was sitting inside a truck, engine off, just watching people. I only recognized him because of the fishing shirt. The second he noticed me noticing him, he looked away and grabbed his phone like he'd been busy the whole time. I remember this cold feeling hitting my stomach, like suddenly every little thing from before connected all at once. The grocery store, the beach, the pacing outside. I got back in my car immediately and drove back to the rental. The weird thing is, I kept checking my mirrors the whole drive without really realizing it. Like my body already knew something before my brain accepted it. That night, I made sure every door and window was locked. The house had one of those cheap security camera systems connected to a tablet mounted near the kitchen. Mostly just outdoor cameras pointed toward the stairs and driveway. Around midnight, I was lying on the couch watching YouTube when I heard something outside. Not loud, just wood creaking, like somebody stepping slowly on the stairs. I muted the TV instantly. Another creak, then silence. I waited maybe 30 seconds before grabbing the tablet for the cameras. The driveway camera showed nothing. The beachside camera took a second to load. Then I saw him, standing completely still halfway up the stairs. Same guy, one hand resting on the railing, just staring directly toward the house. I froze. I can still remember how hard my heart started beating, because up until then, part of me still thought maybe I was imagining things. But there he was, clear as day. I called out through the door without opening it. "Can I help you?" No answer. He didn't move. I remember the camera feed glitching slightly because of the weak Wi-Fi, and for 1 second, the image froze. Then when it refreshed, he was 2 steps higher. I immediately backed away from the door. That's when he finally spoke, very calm. "I think you dropped something earlier." I didn't answer. I just stood there staring at the screen. Then slowly, he smiled. Not friendly either. Just wrong. Like he knew I was scared now. He started climbing again, fast this time. I ran to the bedroom and locked the door while calling 911. The dispatcher answered, but the signal kept cutting because the rental was in a dead zone. I could hear banging downstairs. Not kicking, more like trying the doors one by one. Sliding door, front door, sliding door again. I whispered my location to the dispatcher while trying not to make noise. Then everything went quiet. Completely quiet. That somehow felt worse. I stayed there holding my breath for probably 2 minutes before hearing footsteps inside the house. I still don't know how he got in. Maybe one of the doors wasn't fully locked. Maybe he forced something open quietly. But I heard him walking downstairs, slowly. Like he wasn't in a hurry anymore. The dispatcher kept telling me officers were coming. Then I heard something that honestly still messes with me. The bedroom door handle didn't move. He didn't try opening it. Instead, I heard him stop outside the room and just stand there. No breathing, no movement, nothing. Like he was listening to me breathe. I backed toward the window because at that point I realized if he came through that door, I had nowhere else to go. Then my phone lit up from the dispatcher asking if I was still there. The brightness filled the room for a second, and the footsteps immediately moved toward the door, fast. The handle started jerking violently. I shoved the dresser against it and climbed out the window onto the roof over the porch. I honestly don't even remember making the decision. Pure panic. I dropped from the roof into the sand below and took off running barefoot down the beach. Behind me, I heard him yelling something, but the wind drowned most of it out. I only looked back once. He was chasing me. Not sprinting, just running steadily, like he knew eventually I'd tire out. That image still bothers me more than anything else. Not angry, not screaming, just focused. I ran toward the nearest lights I could see farther down the shoreline. My feet were getting torn up on shells and rocks, but adrenaline completely took over. Eventually, I saw police lights near one of the public beach accesses. I started screaming and waving my arms. When officers finally found me, I couldn't even talk right. I was shaking too hard. They searched the house and surrounding area for hours, never found him. But one officer asked me something before I left that place. He asked if I'd told anybody I was staying alone. I said no. Then I remembered the conversation from the beach. The guy asking how long I was staying there, whether anybody came with me. At the time it felt like harmless small talk. A few days later, after I got home, the rental owner emailed me because police wanted copies of the camera footage. Apparently, there was one thing I hadn't seen. Earlier that same evening, before midnight, the cameras caught the man standing near the side of the house for almost 40 minutes. Just standing there, watching the windows. What really got to me though, was the timestamp. Because during part of that time, I had been outside on the deck, listening to the ocean, completely unaware he was already there in the dark, behind the house, watching me the entire time. The whole camping trip was kind of my idea. My girlfriend, Tasha, had been complaining for months that we never went anywhere that didn't involve traffic, loud people, or phones constantly buzzing. I work remote, so most of my life is just staring at a screen. She finally convinced me to take 2 days off and go camping outside town near this lake area, about an hour and a half away. It wasn't deep woods or anything extreme. There were scattered camping spots around the lake, with enough distance between them that you felt alone. During the day, it honestly felt perfect. Quiet, warm. People fishing nearby. Kids riding bikes through the dirt paths. The first day was normal. We grilled hot dogs, walked near the water, and just sat around talking until dark. A few other campers were around us, maybe 4 or 5 sites total. One of them was this older guy in a grey hoodie, sitting alone by a faded blue pickup truck. I remember him mostly because every time I looked over, he was already looking in our direction. Not aggressively, just watching. At one point, Tasha waved awkwardly at him, and he gave this slow nod back without smiling. I figured maybe he was just socially weird. That night, we slept inside the tent, with one of those battery lanterns hanging above us. Around maybe 1 a.m., I woke up needing to pee. I unzipped the tent quietly so I wouldn't wake Tasha and stepped outside. The campground was dead silent. No wind, no talking, nothing. And I noticed the guy's truck was gone. I actually remember feeling relieved for some reason. I walked toward the trees with my flashlight, did my thing, and when I came back, I noticed our cooler had been moved slightly. Not far, just enough that I stopped walking. I stared at it for a second, trying to remember if that's where we left it. Then I convinced myself I was overthinking and went back to sleep. The second day was fine too, mostly. We rented kayaks for a while and grabbed food from a gas station outside the campground. But when we came back in the afternoon, the same blue pickup was parked 2 rows closer to our site. That immediately felt weird to me, because there were plenty of open spots. Tasha noticed too. She asked, "Didn't he used to be over there?" I just shrugged and said, maybe the ground was uneven or something. But later that evening, while I was unpacking firewood from the trunk, I looked up and saw him standing near the bathroom building. Just standing there. Not smoking, not on his phone, looking directly at our campsite again. I remember trying not to stare back, because I didn't want to turn it into a thing. But every time I glanced over, he was still there. Tasha eventually noticed and quietly asked, "Do you know him?" "No." "You sure?" That annoyed me a little because obviously I was sure. But honestly, her asking made it feel more serious. That night was our last night there. Around 10 or 11, most of the campground lights were off. We sat by the fire for a while talking before heading into the tent. I had this uncomfortable feeling by then though, like the kind where you keep checking outside without realizing it. So before sleeping, I locked our car and moved some stuff around inside the tent so my wallet and keys were near me. I don't know why I did that. I think part of me already knew something wasn't right. Sometime later, I woke up to a noise. Not loud, just this soft crunching sound outside. At first I thought it was an animal. Then I heard another sound. Metal lightly tapping against metal. The car door handle. I sat up immediately. The lantern inside the tent was off, so everything looked dark blue from moonlight. Tasha was asleep beside me. Then I heard footsteps slowly moving around the tent. Not walking normally either. Slow, careful, like someone trying not to make noise. I froze. I could actually hear breathing outside for a second. I whispered Tasha's name, and she woke up confused. I covered her mouth before she could speak louder. We both stayed completely still. The footsteps stopped, then silence. I remember thinking, maybe whoever it was realized we were awake. A full minute passed without any sound. Then suddenly, our cooler scraped loudly across the dirt outside. Tasha jumped and grabbed my arm hard. I slowly unzipped the smallest part of the tent window and looked out. At first, I didn't see anybody. Then I noticed movement near the car. The older guy. He was crouched beside the passenger side door, with one of our bags sitting next to him. He wasn't rushing. That's the part that scared me most. He looked completely calm, like he'd done this before. I whispered, "Call 911. Tasha grabbed her phone, but there was barely any signal. One bar flickering on and off. Then the guy suddenly stopped moving. I swear I think he heard us whispering. He slowly turned his head toward the tent. Even from that distance, I could tell he was staring directly at us. Then he stood up and started walking toward the tent. Not fast, just steady. I remember my brain kind of locking up for a second because it didn't feel real. I kept expecting him to say something like wrong campsite or ask for help or literally anything normal. But he didn't say a word. He got close enough, but I could hear his boots dragging slightly in the dirt. Then his shadow stopped right outside the tent. Complete silence again. I could hear Tasha crying quietly beside me. Then the zipper moved a little, just an inch, like he was testing it. That snapped me out of it. I grabbed the lantern and screamed at him to get the hell away from us while turning it on. The second the light hit him, he backed away fast, but not scared. Almost irritated, like we interrupted something. Then he suddenly reached down and grabbed something near the entrance of the tent. My keys. I must have dropped them earlier, and that's when I realized he'd probably been around our site way longer than we thought. He took off running toward the trees with the keys and one of our bags. I jumped out after him without thinking, mostly because our phones and wallets were inside that bag. Huge mistake. The second I got outside, I realized how dark everything actually was away from the firelight. I could hear him moving ahead of me through the woods, but I couldn't see him clearly. Then I heard another sound behind me. Footsteps. Not Tasha's. Heavy footsteps. I turned around and saw another person standing near our campsite. Just standing there beside the tent. Tall. Hood up. I genuinely think my body went cold in that moment, because the entire time, I thought it was just one guy. The second figure didn't move toward me or say anything. They just watched me from the darkness, while the other guy crashed through the woods somewhere behind me. I backed up slowly toward the tent without taking my eyes off them. Then the second person calmly walked away toward the road. No hurry, like they knew nobody was coming. Tasha was hysterical by the time I got back. We threw whatever we could into the car, and thankfully I had a spare key hidden in my backpack. We left almost everything else there. The police did come later after we got enough signal driving out. They searched the area, but never found the men or most of our stuff. The creepiest part happened afterward though. A few days later, while unpacking what we managed to save, Tasha found her makeup bag shoved underneath the back seat of the car. Inside, it was one of those folded campground maps they hand out at the entrance. Only our campsite had been circled, and on the back, written in pen, were the exact times we left the site both days. Like somebody had been sitting there watching us long before that last night.